because...
Just tell us what you're meaning by geoengineering.
Okay, so there are two main topics in geoengineering, and they're called solar radiation management and carbon dioxide removal. Solar radiation management involves things like injecting salt into the air in order to brighten marine clouds so that the clouds reflect more sunlight than they do now, so that to remove the heat from the planet. Also, the other one is the example from Mount Pinatubo, where vast volcanic eruptions injected a large quantity of sulfur into the stratosphere. And Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines nearly 30 years ago cooled the planet by nearly a degree, just temporarily. And that's something that we could replicate. So that's one example. There was that crazy movie Geostorm looking at space mirrors, so there's a whole lot of science fiction that's associated with geoengineering as well. But the other area is carbon dioxide removal. So for example, if we can use the carbon dioxide that's coming out of coal-fired power stations to make limestone, then we can use that for concrete. And so all of that CO2 that's currently going into the air could instead go into building construction and roads. And we could, as I mentioned, we could grow algae, seaweed on vast quantities of the world ocean. These are the sorts of ideas that are covered by geoengineering technology. And the problem is that the UN, as in general, says that will deflect our attention from emission reduction, which is the main game. And so there's really strong forces preventing any investment in field trials. Peter?
Okay, so I didn't mean there's no political.
Yeah.
What I meant is, in terms of science, it's really important, I think, to do both.
Yep, I agree.
In terms of maths,
Yeah.
right? We want to reduce the input of carbon as much as we can. I think as ordinary people, we need to reduce our carbon footprint as much as we possibly can. And we want to encourage our governments to introduce policies and corporations to introduce policies to do as much as we possibly can. And we also need to do what you're talking about, and I see great benefits in looking at doing that also in ways that reduce or reverse the loss of species as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's very important. So I think we want to try to avoid or move towards avoiding a conflict between those two approaches.
Yeah.
You know, they need to be done in harmony. So just leaving that aside, I also wanted to talk about the theological side of things. And again, I don't see, I found what you said extremely interesting and something I haven't thought about at all in terms of the zodiac things and so on. But I've been thinking about this too from a completely different approach. And, you know, on my phone I've got the Bible, and it's as if, you know, you might want to think, and I think people often think, oh, I've got the Bible in my hands, so I've contained the Word of God in my hands. And I think that's terrible. And I think we've kind of got this tradition that the Word of God is somehow contained and done and dusted, you know, in 100 AD or something. And
my view is that many of the things that traditional Christianity has treated as literal are actually parables.
yeah,
So you got
and metaphors.
Like the tree of life is a wonderful metaphor for the visible skies. And so the tree of life is in Revelation. I'll explain it to you later, but it's very clearly a metaphor for the visible starry skies. John? Sorry. Sorry, Peter.
I just started my point.
Yeah, okay,
I'll try to be really quick.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is that we need to look at the spirituality of this country for the Word of God. We need to look at seeing the image of God in nature around us and look at finding God there so that we value that as much as we value people. We need to see ourselves in humble relation with the rest of the creation, not as mistresses and master of that, not as seeing those things as everything that we can just take and destroy and use for ourselves. I'll leave it.
That's a really profound statement. Thank you very much, Peter.
Yeah, Claudine and then John.
I just liked us to not leave this session without considering some scepticism towards geoengineering, which it's true that we are in a crisis, but I'm concerned about trying to address this crisis by other very drastic impacts on the environment in a short space of time, which cannot be tested without having an impact. We can't test geoengineering in a laboratory. There are concerns about the geographic inequity of constructing or simulating a volcano. That's not something to be taken lightly. So I'd like to just tamper some of our enthusiasm about that.
And that does represent the mainstream view, which is, like, say, for example, I would like us to test iron salt aerosol as a way of replicating how the planet naturally cooled in the Ice Age, when a lot of dust from the continents blew onto the ocean, and that the iron in that dust caused plankton to grow, which sucked out a whole lot of CO2 from the air and was a main cause of the expansion of glaciers. So that's one example where small-scale field tests under scientific supervision in coastal areas would be able to tell whether replicating that sort of an approach would be safe and effective. But what we still find is that even such scientifically ethical approaches to geoengineering methods just really get the cold shoulder, get rejected on a political basis. And the political basis is, well, we've got this war on coal and you're undermining our war on coal. So you've got this polarisation of world politics over climate. You know, you've got the right wing who are in favour of fossil fuels, and you've got the left wing who want to shut down fossil fuels. And then people say, well, geoengineering gives extra space for fossil fuels, so it's on the right wing. And so the politics...
I think it's more subtle.
Yeah, I'm just presenting it in a very compressed, simplified form. But I think it shows that, and then, as you say, like solar radiation management, stratospheric aerosol injection could affect the ozone layer. There's all these sorts of unforeseen consequences,
yes,
as you're pointing out, that need to be thought through.
Yes, John, please.
Yeah, I had a question that's complementary to Claudine's point, which is things like geoengineering, which almost borders to playing God. And the foundational premise of that is that we are intellectually capable enough, and in terms of scientific capacity, we are already there, that we have the confidence to maneuver how climate works and our ecological system works. We don't actually, do you know if that debate has been settled and all this moral premise of that?
Well, how do you settle a debate about playing God? Like Clive Hamilton had a book with that title. And you know, there's comparisons to the whole Frankenstein tradition and Prometheus, and so there's a whole lot of mythology that's involved there. But the essential thing is that what we're doing now, as I mentioned, we add 20,000 tonnes of carbon to the air every minute, and that is a massive world geoengineering experiment. Where it's like, I mean, my favourite model is, I don't know if anybody remembers Bugs Bunny, but he visited Marvin the Martian, and Bugs managed to stop Marvin from blowing up the Earth, and Marvin said, what happened to the kaboom? There was meant to be an earth-shattering kaboom. And I think that's what we're looking at with the amount of carbon that we're adding to the air, that we are heading towards the dangerous tipping point towards a hothouse Earth. And all that geoengineering is talking about is pulling us back from that precipice. It's about reducing the radiative forcing, to use the technical term, that we are adding. and so reduce that risk of catastrophic climate change. And so I think the idea that, and so the point is that the risks of climate change are actually far bigger and more dangerous than the risks of geoengineering.
I guess my question is that whether that height is settled.
Far from.
Maybe a couple more and then we finish. And Terry, go to.
Could I suggest that you left one word out of your heading? Accelerated climate change. I think that's the big problem. And we're talking now about the geological age of the Anthropocene. Geologists claim that historically the globe was 6 degrees warmer, and we're still emerging from the Ice Age to that 6 degrees warmer. What's the main reason? Not changing carbon dioxide, but changing the number of human beings. We're overpopulated. That's where the extra waste is coming from.
Well, look, that's a really big debate, population, but I might just pass on that one.
I wanted to say our youngest member here is still studying. I'm saying it's something good that you made a point about the chemistry of iron salt, and the point is that it's empirical and we need to test things. I said my science many years ago, but if there's any doubts about things, this is all empirical and we can do tests. That's my point, to work out what works with geoengineering.
Yeah.
I'm not wanting to speak too much on
Shall we?
Well, we don't know. My science is terribly old, but I'm saying that if there's any question about it, then this is something that can be tested and looked into,
And that's exactly right. And I think, we look to pharmaceutical drug trials as an example and say, they're not going to let any drugs onto the market, or they shouldn't let any drugs onto the market until it's proved that they're safe and effective. And exactly the same sorts of restrictions should apply to these sorts of climate restoration ideas.
Okay, we have the last question.
There are coming up a lot of contributions. Maybe this can be final from our friend and then to Margaret.
Mine was just a question about the program. Will there be an opportunity in that last session to talk about what we're going to do about Scott Morrison? Because that's what I do. Because he talks about love, and I think talking about love, for me, is much more attractive than talking about eschatology. You're never going to persuade anybody about that. But you can work through compassion. We cannot work through people caring for one another. There's an enormous amount of power and available action there. And when are we going to exchange information about the things that are actually happening at the moment that other people might know about? That's what I'm wondering. Can you do that in the last session?
That's the question.
On actual
The last session. Is that?
What's the second last?
We have a session set aside at the end of the day to talk about practical things we can do in response to
Here we go. Yeah, we do have
Yes.
that.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
So, thank you for your presentation. My question is, how do we young people prepare ourselves for the second coming of Jesus? I've heard you talking about preparation, about the coming of Jesus again. So, there's so many things being twisted around in this world these days. So, how do we prepare ourselves?
Yeah, it's a really profound question, and I think reading the Bible is a really good thing to do. But there's a really interesting line from the theologian John Calvin, which might surprise some of you. But Calvin, who was one of the founders of the Protestant Reformation, he said that when what we read in the Bible conflicts with the evidence of our senses, then we should go with the evidence of our senses. And so he's saying, so there's many elements of traditional biblical study that have been, I suppose, rejected by modern science. And so the challenge is to say, oh, science is wrong. The challenge is to say, how can we reinterpret our biblical theology in a symbolic way? How can we reinterpret what the original author's real meaning and intention was, so that we can understand a really complex topic like the second coming of Jesus Christ in a way that is compatible with our modern scientific understanding.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the contribution. And one last thing, we got a new friend, Kevin. Would like to introduce your name and where are you from?
Yeah, I'm Carrie Crawford.